Good evening, everybody, from mainland Europe, where both Damian and I are located, albeit in two different countries. I'm in Germany and Damian's in Poland. Damian, how are you?
I'm great. Excited to be here. I've seen the channel. I've seen some, maybe not full videos, but some clips, and excited to make an appearance.
Great. Don't be too excited. It's nothing special. We
Ah,
might get 5 views, we might get 100, but we'll see how it goes. But listen, Damian, I'm really pleased that you're on board as well because, listen, there's certain gaps that we all have in our tennis CV. Certainly, most of us have the gap regarding the lower ranked players, let's say, on both the men's and the women's side. Most of us tend to spend all of our time talking about big threes and Serena Williams, and I'm no different. So I'm really hoping that you're going to fill in some of the gaps today.
yeah, I'm gonna try. I have some gaps too. Definitely the lower circuits when it comes to the women's tour is where I'm not as strong. But hopefully, the qualifiers. I hope I'm gonna define it. But
Sure.
yeah, my main focus is definitely the challenger level on the men's side.
Got it. But I guess day one of a major, or round one, I should probably say, of a major for you, Damian, given the fact that you do tend to focus on the challenges a lot and you do tend to focus on the sort of qualifiers, etc. I guess day one of a major is as exciting, if not more exciting, than the latter stages for someone who really follows the paths of these players.
Yeah, honestly, the second week of a major, I mean, there aren't many matches. I wouldn't say I'm bored because obviously there's a lot of tennis on the lower circuits, so you can still watch tennis, well, practically 24 hours a day. That depends on which countries we're playing, of course, but you know what I mean. But yeah, the first week is definitely among along with the qualifying for slams. These are probably one of my favorite weeks of the season for sure. Um, Especially the first three four rounds. Yeah, this is what slams are about for me. Qualifying at the first and the first 4 rounds, and then you know. The second week, I tend to skip some matches that I'm not so excited about. It's actually very weird, and I cannot explain it because some matches, if you give me them in the challenger package, I would be very excited to see them. Like for example, there was a match between Delbonis and Struff this year in Braunschweig, and I was like,
Okay.
yes, that's fantastic. I was even live there, and that was something incredible for me. But if you gave me this on the ATP tour in a slam, I'd be like, nah, I'd rather choose another one. So I
Yeah,
cannot really
right.
explain it.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about you then, Damien, and in response to that, and about how you kind of became more curious and when did this occur about some of the lower ranked players that don't really get all the attention that the others do?
Yeah. I mean, I started following tennis probably around 2012, but was
Hmm.
main tour only, with some huge breaks. It certainly wasn't as constant as it is right now. I think the first challenger that I really remember following at least was Bratislava 2017, when it was actually the last tournament Jerzy Janowicz played before that long break that he had until 2020. So that was basically the first event that I followed. I still remember all of the matches that he played there. He retired in the quarterfinals to Kukushkin, but it was
Hmm.
I didn't really start following challenger tennis on a daily basis after that. I think in 2018, because in Poland still on the ATP side we don't have anything else but challengers, and I wanted to get some tennis experience live in the stands. I saw a Davis Cup match between Poland and Australia in 2013, and then for 5 years I hadn't attended. Never mind. I hadn't attended a single. I hadn't attended a single tennis match live, and then I figured that I just let's go to an event in Poland. And on the men's side, which was always my favorite, the best choice was the challengers. So I came to Sopot. It was actually held in Gdynia that year, but still called Sopot. And I enjoyed it so much because of the low key atmosphere, like how close you could actually get to the players, how good the level was. Because even though I had watched some matches, some streaming from challengers, I still had no idea how good all of these guys were going to turn out to be. And I think it's a common misconception that the difference between the levels is so huge. But still, it wasn't really, it wasn't like I came back home from Sopot and then I started following challenger tennis on a daily basis. No, it was about a year later when I went to Sopot again, and then to Szczecin, which was actually my first tournament as an accredited, let's say, media member, however you want to call it. And then I just figured that there's a bit of a lack of coverage. There's a lack of content when it comes to the lower circuits. And I asked my boss whether he wanted something on it, and he was very receptive to the idea. So after Szczecin, I started writing some stuff on the Challenger Tour, and that was my motivation to start following on a weekly basis. And now I can't really imagine my life without it. So yeah, it's been about less than 3 years since I started following like weekly, and with each year I'm learning so much. With each year I'm noticing that I know a lot more about these guys, and just by actually working working in tennis, working on some content, working on the podcast, on articles, you get to learn so much more than you do just by watching. And I'm very happy with the base of knowledge that I managed to build and want to continue building.
And your reputation in this world, if you like, has certainly received a small boost in the last few days. And I'm going to highlight exactly what that boost is or was, in that you've had a couple of nice shout outs from players such as Liam Brody here regarding a thread you put on Twitter just the other day.
Yeah, that was very cool, for sure. I am followed by a few players from the Challenger Tour, I think. And Brody and Millman, who you're probably going to talk about, aren't one of them. So that was a bit of a surprise. I was actually, I think both of their tweets came during the rain delay that was in the qualifying. Okay. I didn't even spot because the thread blew up. I didn't even spot the tweets that Brody, mentioned me in until like hours later, because the notifications just piled up so much. But yeah, that definitely one of the finest hours I had on tennis Twitter. I hope in someday this is going to also help me monetize it more heavily, because obviously it's a tough world, it's a tough business, and especially if your main focus is challengers, then I hope maybe this is another good step for me to be noticed more in the media.
Yeah, absolutely. Liam Brody, by the way, is someone as well who last week probably stepped out, I would suggest, from mainstream tennis comments. Most people have either avoided the subject of Novak Djokovic's non-appearance in the US, or they've spoken out in support. He decided, though, to sort of highlight the situation regarding qualifiers, wildcards, uncertainty, regarding the fact that Djokovic obviously didn't pull out until a few hours before the draw. And of course, in Australia Australia this year, he didn't pull out until after the draw. Do you have any thoughts on that, Damian?
Yeah, I think after the draw is probably an overkill. Like it just really ruins how it was built. I can't remember the year when it happened, but there was that one where a couple of players for other reasons withdrew from the US Open, and then we had like Rublev in the top spot or someone like that.
Yeah,
and it really shaped. Oh, I know. I think it was that one where Federer and Nadal were in the same half at the US Open 2017. And then the bottom half was like very so much weaker. And obviously Federer and Nadal didn't happen, the bottom Federer. But yeah, just it really ruins the draw. And I think that's maybe a bit too much. I can understand why Novak wanted to keep his hopes up until the very end. There were also some like, maybe it wasn't anything like clear, but there were some ideas that maybe the CDC is changing something. Apparently it didn't, of course. So I can understand it, but yeah, it is unfortunate, especially for Alexander Kovacevic, because if Djokovic pulled out, then Wolf would have gotten in automatically, and his wildcard would have been withdrawn, and Kovacevic was the next guy who was going to take his spot. Kovacevic lost in the opening round at the US Open qualifying, of course, to Denis Novak. I think this was also pointed out by Ben Rothenberg on Twitter, that Kovacevic always held Djokovic in such high regard, and he was one of his idols. I would be, I really want to hear what Kovacevic has to say about this, whether this changes anything or not. But yeah, it's very natural, obviously, for Djokovic to wait. It's basically a situation that has no real possibility of getting solved with both parties being leaving this dilemma happy, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't really do anyone any favors, but as you say, it's understandable from Djokovic's perspective. But Djokovic, by the way, as you did mention, is somebody who does sometimes and often actually stand up for some of the lower ranked players. And we remember he's someone who's championed, increasing the pay, for example, because of course a lot of these guys are living week to week or year by year. They're not exactly on the breadline, but they're not making amazing salaries. If you're outside the top 150, for example, qualifying for the main draw of a slam is the difference between having a good year and a bad year, at least financially.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is actually whether you're making slam qualifying or not, especially like when you see this year, the opening round of the qualies already earned you $20,000, which is pretty crazy. And there was also because I think if Kovacevic went in, then the next guy there was Paul Martin Tifon, who came to New York and practiced with a few guys, spent some nice time there, but obviously didn't get in. Because again, Kovacevic would have been in the main draw, and then Paul Martin Tifon would have been in the qualifying. But I think, I can't remember the exact stat at the moment, but like the money that he would have received for being in the US Open qualies round one would have been like very similar to his whole career prize money. He's not a guy who has been on tour extremely long, but I mean, it's still very, quite shocking when you think about it this way. I think if you're in Grand Slam qualifying, then you're probably going to be at least in the black, like at least that, and for a year. But only 250 to about 250. Well, in this case, even less, because the cutoff was very low at the US Open this year. Only about 250 players can actually be in Grand Slam main draw and Grand Slam qualifying. So it's not an easy world, but that's how it works. But yeah, I totally agree that Djokovic has been one of the players also on the player council, of course, with PTPA. He's been one of the players who has actually done something to improve that situation. And yeah, kudos to him for that, of course.
Damian, do you know regarding you mentioned that the $20,000, which obviously is a very good amount of money, and probably for many people watching will represent a huge part of their salary. But do you know if they get their hotels all paid for, or do they get free coaching at the tournaments? Do they get free medical help? I guess they get that, but I guess they have to pay for their own flights and hotel. And if they are lucky to have a fitness person, they have to pay for that too.
Well, flights for sure. They have to pay for them themselves.
Okay.
I'm not sure how it is at the US Open, honestly, because a couple of years ago, there was this great reform on the Challenger Tour where every single tournament now has to have the hospitality package, which is amazing because it includes hotel. And that also made a big difference. I'm not sure how it is at the US Open, honestly, if there's like one player hotel, but if there is, then I suppose so. Yeah, I pulled it up, and it's $21,100 for making US Open round one. In flights, definitely have to be
US Open round one or US
round
Open
one qualifying,
yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And flights you definitely have to pay for yourself. I'm not actually sure how it is at the US Open when it comes to the hotel.
And how do you get to US Open qualifying round one? Is there a qualifying for the qualifying?
No. There's nothing like that. Although Wimbledon used to hold this pre-qualification tournament, but it was only for like one qualifying wildcard. That's how Marcus Willis famously got into Wimbledon 2016.
Yeah,
and qualified, and then played Federer in the second round, of course. There's nothing like that. There's just a regular entry list, a few wildcards, of course. You can use a PR, but generally the cutoff is about 230 to 250. Here it was very, very low at the very beginning, but I think it ended up at around 240. So pretty much the standard. It obviously depends, because a couple that was that 1 year ago or 2 years ago, when a lot of the players didn't travel to the US Open, so then some lower ranked guys went in. But no, it's just a regular entry list.
Yeah, and I actually just reached out to Marcus the other day because I'd love to have him on board to talk about that run and just what it's like as well to be a qualifier as well. And that was a remarkable one. Did you say it was second round he got to against Federer?
Yeah. Beat Berankis in the first round.
Okay, it's a very good scalp. But yes,
and also, do you know, this is actually fantastic. Do you know whom he beat in the qualifying itself? No. Rublev, Medvedev, and I think Sugita as well.
Wow!
Yeah, just a fantastic field, and yeah, when not many people know about it, honestly, because when the run was when we saw this run and it was such an incredible story, no one really knew yet how good Rublev and Medvedev are going to be. But looking at it from that perspective, 6 years later, that makes this even more exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, for those watching and tuning in that aren't familiar with the story, it's Marcus Willis who got to the second round at Wimbledon in 2017 as a qualifier from absolutely nowhere. I mean, I don't know what his world ranking was. Do you?
I'd say about 700.
700. It was in the low hundreds anyway. And he's just somebody who's, probably above a club level, but not much higher, I would suggest. And suddenly he's in the second round at Wimbledon. But that list of players that he beat in, many tennis fans.
772.
772. Yeah. And that was 2017, I think, wasn't it? 2016, sorry. So he beat Marchenko as well in the qualifiers, which is not bad. I mean, I'm familiar with Ilya Marchenko.
When did he beat Marchenko?
Oh no, that's 2017. I'm getting my years muddled up again. But anyway, that run that you mentioned with Rublev and Medvedev is just insane. I mean, then to go out to Federer, no shame in that. And it's a great story, and I'd love to speak to him about it one day. But that's for another time. Let's focus on the present. We spoke about Djokovic. We spoke about many things. Let's have a look at the draw, actually. Let's share that because I want to go through some of these guys here. Are there any names there that have stand out in terms of how this is just the top third or top quarter of the draw, Daniel Medvedev section. Are there any of these qualifiers that stand out for you, having seen some action in the last few days?
Absolutely. I mean, Ibingu is a phenomenal story. He won the US Open in boys singles 5 years ago. And actually had an absolutely ridiculous feat because right after he won the US Open boys singles, he won a challenger just the week after. But it ended up that his body just wasn't really ready for this sort of success. And he only got to 298 when it comes to the ranking before he took a long, almost 3 year long break in 2019. And then he came back this year. It wasn't it wasn't an injury break for the whole 3 years. It was also related to COVID because from time to time we just see him picking in some Chinese articles. You could read about him picking up some exhibition titles. So we knew that he was active. We knew that he was playing at least for some of his hiatus. But it ended up that he only came back in February. Another retirement, which forced him out of the game for 2 months. So there's basically a lot of injury question marks with him. But whenever he's been healthy this year, he's been insane. 33 wins and 4 losses right now, and 3 of these losses coming via retirement.
Okay.
2 of them even in one of them was at 5-5, I think, in the match or something like that. But the other one was when he was leading. So they weren't really retirements. When he was I don't know. 5-7-0 3 down. That was only one of these 3. And the talent he has is just insane when it comes to the hand skills, when it comes to the return. He basically had the toughest draw out of anyone in the qualifying, I think. He played Berankis, whom we're already mentioning for the second time this video for some reason. Just like Marcus Willis, he beat Ricardos Berankis in the first round, then Travaglia and then Mute. I thought that was, when I saw the draw, I was very afraid that he wasn't going to make it through. But it shows that he's currently trying to schedule himself very lightly. After winning back-to-back challengers a couple weeks ago, he just took a long break before the US Open. turns out he's still playing just as well as he was before. And perhaps that 3-year-long break was actually a blessing in disguise, because maybe otherwise he was going to, just keep playing the tour, keep getting injured, and never really amount to something. Now it looks like, well, he, as I mentioned, he only came back in February, earned 1 ATP point, then didn't start really making any more until April. So he's got basically until April to just add points to his ranking. There's nothing that he's going to be dropping. And there's that big storyline of China never having an ATP top 100 player. And right now it seems like, I don't know, we'll meet in a year and they're going to have 3, Yibing Wu, Zhiren Zhang, and Yuncheng Shang. We're going to get to Zhiren Zhang later, but Yuncheng Shang is not in US Open qualifying yet, but he's currently on a 9-match win streak at the challenger level. But yeah, Yibing Wu will probably get there very soon. And I think he's one of the most dangerous qualifiers in terms of where they can go in the main draw. Playing Basilashvili in the opening round, obviously never easy if the Georgian is hitting the ball well, if he's somehow limiting his errors, which is a huge issue for him. But I think recently with the domestic violence case, with the match fixing allegations as well, it seems like it has really made a huge impact on him mentally. And the last couple of events he played were just awful. So I think this is a fantastic draw for Yibing. And then he can play Shelton or Borges, another qualifier who, it is pretty dangerous, I'd say, but more or less like fought through his qualifying. It wasn't really any great level. And Wu and Shelton actually played a final in Rome. I think it was Rome, Georgia, not Rome, Italy, a month ago. Yibing won 7-5, 6-3. Maybe it could be a bit different with the crowd support that Shelton is going to get, but I think if they meet, he's definitely the favorite again. So there's a very big chance that we see Yibing Wu play Daniel Medvedev in the third round.
Let's talk Ben Shelton, actually, because he's got a wild card, but he is somebody that I guess that's been on your radar as well. None of us would have ever heard of him until maybe a few weeks ago when he has a really good run in Cincinnati. I think he's 17, am I right?
He's 19.
19, okay.
He's 19, obviously played for 2 years in college. His dad is the coach at the University of Florida, Brian Shelton. He was actually the ATP 55 in the 90s, I think. And Ben showed up on the tour, on the Challenger Tour last year, which is when I first heard of him. He was already looking like a very exciting talent. He won a 15K in Champaign and an ITF event. And he already had that lefty explosive game. You could see that there was potential, but you couldn't really tell how good he was going to be yet. And well, I don't follow college tennis that much, but in the 2021-2022 season, he became the NCAA champion, which is why he has a wild card here. But obviously, if he had the results he had during the summer, like the wild card was still going to. He was still going to have that wild card. It wasn't only the NCAA championship, but that was how he got it initially. And well, the level of maturity that I saw in him this year compared to when I last saw him, so the summer of 2021, was just insane. How he now constructs points, how he also trusts the theoretically weaker backhand a lot more. There's been some matches when it was just fantastic, great under pressure. I'm thinking of an opening set against Jordan Thompson when he saved 7 set points, and that was coincidentally that was also one of the matches where in the latter half of it the backhand was just insane. But obviously the main ideas in his game are the lefty serve and just playing the forehand after it, and playing so aggressively with lots of forward intent, and he's super exciting. He just how long ago was it? Like a week ago, he announced that he wasn't going to be back in college, which I think is probably a very sensible decision at this point, because there's just not much for him left to conquer there. I mean, he's just done it all already.
Yeah, but you would say amongst those three, I mean, we're looking at wildcard, Ben Shelton, Borges, and Wu. The person, at least, you think has got it most together at the moment might well be Wu. So you think they could get as far as the third round?
Yeah, as I said, Yibing beat Ben in the final at Rome, and I just think that he matches up against him pretty well, because he well, he absorbs space and redirects it extremely well. And I just think that Ben probably doesn't really have the consistency to hit through him on a fairly fast hard court. And but it's certainly all to be played, all to play for. I think that Borges is just not really in the kind of form to trouble either of these guys at the moment. But he's of course dangerous as well.
There is one name as well in this group, not a qualifier as such, but it's somebody who you may well have been watching on the Challenger Tour, which seems nuts compared to where he was 2 years ago, and that's Dominic Thiem. What have you made? How does that feel when somebody sort of goes down a level or so like this? Does it feel weird to see somebody like Dominic Thiem sort of scratching around for form like this?
Not really. I mean, I think it's becoming a more and more popular idea for top players to take it just very lightly, just try a challenger first, then see how it's going. We've had Nishikori in 2018 start his season from a couple of challengers. He lost in the first round to Novikov in one of them, and then won another one. And then he was in the ATP finals at the end of the season. Obviously, there's that very famous example of Andre Agassi playing a couple of challengers in 97 or 98, Las Vegas and Burbank, I think. He also won one of them maybe, and was like, I can't remember, maybe he was in the final of the other. Also using using challengers as that sort of first test before getting to the main tour. I think it's a great idea for many players. Maybe I didn't necessarily expect it per se, but this year in Marbella, Thiem showed up there, and then Stan Wawrinka also announced that he was going to come back there. So that's obviously huge. Thiem and Wawrinka being back on the same day on the Challenger Tour. And no, I wouldn't say it felt weird. I think after a couple of main tour matches, I was certainly hoping that Thiem would play more challengers because, well, it just seemed that he's not ready yet. And in a way, he used that tour to get, well, not fully ready yet, but to get better, and
Some
hopefully
form,
it's just gonna be
form.
Yeah.
Any of these qualifiers that have impressed you most, either this year or in recent weeks?
Well, I'd say most of them. Well, I'd say all three probably lose their matches. Alexander Richard took a set of Tsitsipas at Wimbledon. Here they're not playing, so here they're not so close to each other. But he's just got a huge game, big serve. When he's redlining, there's pretty much nothing he can do. But I don't think he can do it over the best of 5 format. Galan, whether he can trouble Tsitsipas, play style wise, probably, but again, I don't really think he has the composure to succeed against someone like that. Because obviously best of 5 makes for much. The upsets aren't as frequent as when you play someone over 3 sets, and I think that's a big difference. Nicolas Jarry, of course, was on the main tour for a long while. ATP 38, he got a doping suspension. Slowly coming back. He actually played only one hardcourt match all year before US Open qualifying. But yeah, again, if he can just serve well and keep Berrettini, keep going to tie breaks, or just keep Berrettini, just make Berrettini have to hold his serve, then there is a chance. But again, it's pretty unlikely because from the baseline, it's just a no contest at all.
Sure. And what about any home support for Brandon Holt? Obviously, he's up against compatriot Taylor Fritz, so he'll probably lose out on. That's a bit unfortunate, really, for him that he's playing a fellow American.
Yeah, beautiful story with Tracy Austin being his mother.
Exactly,
She won the US Open twice, of course. But no, I don't think there's any chance here. Brandon Holt won 5 ITF titles at the beginning of the year, but his early days in the challengers haven't been great. I mean, I just don't really think he has the game. I don't think he has the weapons. So this qualifying success comes as a huge surprise. I don't think it was the strongest section, definitely not. He beat Kuzmanov in the final round. Emilio Gomez was probably his best win in round 2, and he was also 3-6-0 3 down in the opening round to Alexander Miller. And I think this run is just a little bit random, and Fritz is probably a bit, I mean, not even a bit. Fritz is just going to be too much. I don't think Holt has anything to realistically hurt Fritz with.
I always take what tennis players say with a pinch of salt, particularly in press conferences. But Taylor Fritz told me this year that he feels more pressure when he's playing a lower ranked player than he does when he's playing somebody above him, such as Rafael Nadal, as he's played a couple of times this year. So if that's something for Brandon Holt to clutch to, he can. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, if I entirely believed Fritz, given the way that he dispatches anybody below him with consummate ease, both this year and other years, and the fact that he often struggles against players above him. So I'm not sure if I believed that he really has that self-belief that he says he does. I always wonder with players. I don't know if, for example, Maxime Cressy, he's somebody who's quite outspoken about how far he thinks he'll go. But I don't know if these players are trying to kid themselves into something. But anyway, it's still a nice story with Brandon Holt. What about, so we've got Thomas Machat there, and also we've got Fernando Bagnes, who's actually sort of been on the tour for a while, and below that, I'm just trying to Zhang as well from China. What about this sort of little trio of players?
Yeah, I think Bagnis is probably a very good draw for Korda. He's just not a hard courter, even though he actually qualified for the French Open, US Open 3 times already, which is a bit of a shock. He was serving very well in the qualifying, but at this point, you still have to say that this is a wonderful draw for Korda. I think both Mahach and Zhang are definitely capable. It's funny that they're in the same section because they actually played the Challenger final last week in Kozerki in Poland. I was there and I was a bit afraid that this was going to hurt their US Open chances. Clearly not. They played the final on Sunday afternoon and then they had to play their first round qualifying matches on Wednesday. So I guess they got I'm not sure when their flights were, but at least they got a full day of rest because of the US Open qualifying round 1 being held over 2 days. I think Mahach has the much tougher opponent, of course. He's playing Van de Zandschulp, whom I don't think it's a good matchup for him. Mahach just he's an excellent mover. He reads the game very well. This was actually one of the things that got him the win over Zhang in Kozerki, because he just really understood tactically what he needs to adjust. And yeah, it just showed that one of these players is a fantastic ball striker and all, but the other things on the court. And the one that fought won, which is a nice message, I suppose, as well. I don't think his style will work particularly well against Van de Zandschulp, but it's probably going to be an entertaining watch, and I don't think it ends in straights. Botic will have a lot of pressure on himself as well, right? Because he needs to defend these US Open quarterfinal points.
He had a really good run last year. Yeah,
exactly. As from the qualifying as well, which ties into what we're talking about. But I think Zhizhen Zhang can actually win a few rounds, which is very optimistic because he can face Casper Ruud in the second round. And I know,
but Ruud on a hard court, you just don't know. Ruud on anything but clay, I think, is less predictable. He could get to the final of a Masters like he did in Miami, or he could go out early like he has done recently.
Yeah, and Zhang is really going to be since the end of June, he's played 5 challengers and made the final in 4 of them, winning 1 of them. The other tournament, he was in the semis. He's just been absolutely bulldozing the challenger circuit. Most of that success came on clay. Only the final in Kozerki was on hard courts, but this was something new to Zhang. He never really succeeded on the dirt before. Back in 2019, he won a couple of Chinese challengers, which were actually on very fast hard courts. So he clearly knows how to play in quicker conditions. He's got this style right now, at least, because at the beginning of the year he didn't really play like that. But right now he just serves big, goes for every single shot. He just has insane belief in himself right now. He's not afraid to take anything up the line. And I think on hard courts he could even be more dangerous because the serve looked just massive in Kozerki and also in the qualifying here. I think he had probably one of the most convincing qualifying campaigns here. And Van Rijthoven, he hasn't played in a month. He was injured, actually lost to Shelton. I can't remember if it was Rome or Indianapolis, but one of these challengers. And on outside of grass, he hasn't really shown he's ready for that ATP Tour quality yet. And I know that a lot of people will say that Zhang hasn't really shown that yet either. And I agree, because his main tour experience is scarce. but just on pure level of ball striking, how beautiful the technique is, because you can really see when you watch him live that that there must have been a lot of coaches trying to perfect this guy. I guess in China they give a lot of funding to players. And you just on pure ball striking, how he's been playing in the past 2 months, I think he's absolutely ready to give a nightmare match to Casper Ruud in the second round. I have no idea if he's going to be ready for it mentally, because as I said, I mean the experience on the main tour, he basically doesn't have any. So that's a concern. But I think he's probably, along with Yibing, the most dangerous qualifier, and I think both of them landed very good draws.
Okay, so I heard you were quite enthusiastic about Wu from China, Zhang from China, and so who was the other player you just mentioned?
I think I just mentioned them.
Okay.
Sure.
So Zhang and Wu seem to be big on those two. We've obviously touched on Van Rijthoven there. He's now ranked 119. He's had an incredible year, or the grass court tournament that he won, and then obviously getting to, I think, the third round in at Wimbledon, where he lost to Djokovic in 4 sets. Of course, I mean that was just a remarkable story.
Yeah, of course. I think the big difference on grass, which couldn't really be predicted, was the slice, because even in indoor hardcourt events, it was never really a big weapon. And that one-hander of his is not really... it was mostly a liability, especially on slower courts. So that's why I think without the slice, at least not really using it that much in the hardcourt matches that I saw, he hasn't played much on hardcourt since Wimbledon, of course. I think only 2 times, and one of them was terrible and he retired in the other. But I just haven't seen him use that slice as much as he was on grass. Obviously, it's not going to be as effective as well.
Sure.
And the chip return as well was huge for him in Hertogenbosch or at Wimbledon, as he said. So yeah, I don't buy it for now.
I just had a quick look at his world ranking. It's 119, I think, and I'm just trying to work out how you'll know for sure better than me. You've got 128 players in a main draw on both the men's and the women's side. Is it the top 64, something like that? Will get automatic?
No. It's actually the list is almost completely automatic, but you have 16 qualifiers and 8 wildcards. So from 128, you have to subtract 24. Then you get 104, but then there's withdrawals, and then there's also guys who use their protected rankings.
Got it.
So basically the cutoff should be more or less about 104. This year, for example, we've had Constant Lestienne, who was ATP 75 playing the qualifying, because the cutoff is just so long. It was just so long ago. I think the main draw one was on the 15th of July, like something like that, 6 weeks before main draw is supposed to start. This was probably 18th of July, and the qualifying cutoff was on the 1st of August. So if you make any good runs after that, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's why Van Rijthoven isn't in the main draw, because the amount of players that actually get in from the entry list are only 104, not 128.
But with players like Djokovic and Zverev and Opelka, and I'm sure there's half a dozen more absent for one reason or another. That's how it is. And of course, I guess maybe there's some players as well that... Well, let's have a look at this group of qualifiers that we've got here. Any names jump out at you in terms of being impressed?
Yeah, by the way, I can just tell you, because I have the entry list here with like the PRs and all.
Okay.
Coric, Wawrinka, Bedene, and Edmund were the guys who used their protected rankings. So 4 of them, and actually there were only 5 withdrawals. Zverev, Djokovic, Monfils, Opelka, and Harris. And Djokovic was, of course, after the deadline. So in a way, because there were 4 PRs and 4 withdrawals, the final cutoff was 104. Which was the ranking that Jack Sock had at the time of the cutoff in the middle of July. It all evened out, basically.
Maybe Van Rijthoven's ranking, because he's 119, I think, as it stands. Maybe at the time of making this decision, he was even fractionally higher. I don't know. It just he was
how... because his career high is 101.
Okay.
And at the time of the cutoff, he was 101st. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, right. And actually, he's quite unlucky with that ranking as well, because of course he would have gained a lot of points at Wimbledon
Oh yeah.
had it, of course, had points available. But that's a separate story. Any of these qualifiers that jump out at you here?
Oh, 5 of them. And actually, all of them have, well, sort of winnable matches. We've just seen Adrian Manarino reach the win Winston-Salem
He won, yeah.
last night. Yeah, he beat Jarry
I
in the
don't know.
final.
I think this match will probably be on Tuesday, which is very good news for Manarino, just to give him an extra 24 hours.
I'm actually, I don't remember which half of the draw plays first. I should know it by now.
I do know it's the top half place on the men's side. It's the top half that plays first. So Medvedev's side, if you like.
Whereas Rafa so Manarino is gonna play on Tuesday. You're right. Yeah, he's playing his Brouwer. He has Brouwer. However, it's red. You know, Dutch names are extremely tough for anyone who's not Dutch.
Yeah.
I actually have a Belgian friend who tries to teach me all of these Dutch and Belgian pronunciations, and well, with Brouwer, it's not going well. But he had this fantastic run to ATP 250 quarterfinals in Houston, where there was that whole controversy when he in the qualifying there he lost to Steven Diaz. Like the match, the umpire actually said game set match Diaz. But then he checked the mark and he reversed that. And Brouwer got to the main draw this way, got to the quarterfinals, which at the time seemed like an incredibly weird run. Like it just seemed like it was out of nowhere. But he's had a fantastic summer. And on grass as well, he's got this huge lefty serve. He's improved his baseline game where it's now actually workable, where it belongs at the challenger level. I don't know if he can beat Manarino, but maybe he won't beat that... maybe he won't be that scared of these lefty spins that Manarino is throwing at him because he's also a lefty. Okay. I don't know. Just seems like a matchup that isn't as bad for him as for some other players. Pavel Kotov has been one of the stories of the year for me as well. He was so dominant in Roland Garros qualifying, and I thought he maybe could do something in that event, but he also drew a pretty tough player in Botic van de Zandschulp. Here again, he has this... he has this weird... he is in this weird spot where he can do something, but it's Brandon Nakashima, US Open. Theoretically, Brandon should just be too strong. Kotov plays a pretty weird game where he's just he's very solid from the baseline and kind of beats you with it usually. And won a couple of challengers this year, and I think in another section he would have been dangerous. Although hard courts, I'd say clay is probably his better surface, but he's pretty suitable. He also won an indoor challenger. I think Chris Eubanks has a fantastic draw. He definitely has to be happy with this. I actually love the quote from him, which I heard a couple of days ago, about now believing that he, like compared to the previous years when he was entering the US Open, that now he believes he belongs there. Okay. That in the previous years, maybe he didn't think he belonged with the top players. And right now he does. And I think that's super important in his game. And Pedro Martinez, obviously on a hard court, that's very, very doable. And with the serve that Chris has, with the big weapons from the ground, I think he's probably a slight favorite of this match or something like that.
We're going to skate down. This is an unfortunate draw for Cocal here, from France. That's an unfortunate one to come up against informed Borna Coric, I would say.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We'll see if Coric is actually able to play tennis the same way he did as in Cincinnati. Because earlier in the year, he had this challenger win in Parma where, after that, I was like dead certain that Borna Coric is going to be back in the top 100 in a second. And his next few tournaments weren't this good. He wasn't serving like that anymore. Okay. So, yeah, I'm just hoping that this time he can actually follow up on it. But, yeah, if he does, it's really... Well, Alcaraz is in trouble. It's not Quaco who's in trouble. It's not only Quaco who's in trouble. It's actually Alcaraz who's in trouble.
Talking of Alcaraz, is he somebody that you noticed perhaps more than the rest, noticed earlier than the rest of us did? I would say it's about it's 12 months since the US Open. I'm just trying to think if there was a build-up with Alcaraz before then. The US Open, I'd heard of him because the tennis podcast had been bigging him up for a while, particularly Matt on there. But is he somebody that you noticed in the juniors at all, as given that you're sort of looking a bit outside the bigger sphere?
He didn't play that much in the juniors, actually. Like, for the most part, he was too good for the juniors. But it's a good question, because he actually made huge headlines when he was 14 already. He made the
Barcelona,
quarterfinals, and
maybe.
then he actually made the quarterfinals at an ITF event as a 14-year-old and beat Gallo, Federico Gallo. But I can't remember where Gallo was ranked back then, but probably in the top 300 or something like that. It was just an incredible upset, and that's like he just kept breaking all of the age records in terms of first challenger wins, first ATP tour wins. So I think that was when I first heard of him. Definitely started watching him a lot more when in 2020 he had that Rio de Janeiro run where he beat Ramos Vinolas. That was huge, and he was just killing ITFs at the beginning of the season. And then after the restart, he started playing the Challenger Tour heavily, and just winning almost every time, because he won 3 Challenger titles in 2020, which I believe was a tour leading result back then. Obviously, the Challengers weren't. We didn't have as many events in 2020 due to the restart and due to not many countries willing to host challengers. But yeah, that's probably where I started watching Alcaraz a lot, and I feel like it shows, because so many. Well, when I notice people on Twitter saying that maybe Alcaraz is overrated, and maybe that's all the hype comes too early.
You mean they're saying it now, or they were saying it a year or so ago?
Right now, or I don't know, at the US Open, yeah, that works as well. Like, I think most of these people only started watching him in like 2021, and the guys who knew him earlier, we are all, at least most of us, are so confident in Carlos Alcaraz winning slams in the future. Like, it's just this belief
it's
that's
an inevitability.
unshakable. Yeah, it's completely, it had that aura, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to skip Del Bonis. Listen, nothing against the Argentinian, but I think he's someone that we all know something about. There's quite a few players, of course, that are regular qualifiers, that are ranked around about sort of 100 or so in the world, and they sort of break into the top 100 and they drop out again, and so on and so forth. And he certainly falls into that category. And I think we all have a basic understanding at the very least regarding him. So we will skip him. Let's go over to the women's side. Were there any qualifiers that stood out? I'm just going to bring up some here. We've got, there's quite a little bunch here together. Any of these ones on our screen right now that jump out at you?
Of course, Linda Fruhvirtova, one of the Fruhvirtova sisters. She's 17, Brenda is 15, not playing the US Open yet, but she's actually going to be in around the top 200 pretty soon. Brenda, the 15-year-old, she's just been on a fantastic streak. In ITF 25K events, 20 wins in a row, including like 15 in the past 19 days or something like that. And Linda, of course, 2 years older, also a lot of junior success. She had that Azarenka win, which I think, even though it was a retirement, I think we can count it as a completed win, because let's be honest, that retirement was, well, Azarenka recently announced that podcast that she's going to release, and she said that she was going to talk about this match as well. But I think, for the most part, we can say that this match was, won. It shouldn't really be treated as a retirement victory. It was an actual victory, even if Azarenka was feeling unwell, probably. Both Fruhvirtova sisters, actually, I'm very torn on, because they made a lot of headlines due to their ages. Like, they just keep, again, sort of like Alcaraz, they break all these records. But in Carlos's game, you could see the weapons, you can see how aggressive he was, which is so important on the tour, to maybe not only, you don't have to be an attacker, you don't have to have an aggressive playstyle to succeed, but just to have some sort of options of giving yourself 3 points, just to play with, impose your playstyle on the opponent a bit. And I think both of them don't really do that. Like, they mostly defeat their opponents on consistency. So I'm sort of torn as to whether they can win slams in the future. I think, in a way, it will take some adjustments in their games. But obviously, she's in a great spot already, about the top 150 of the WTA rankings. And I think she also has she's one of the qualifiers, even though probably not one of the strongest ones, but she's one of them who can actually win a match, because she's facing Xinyu Wang, who's, just still, well, maybe just like Fruvirtova, making sort of her first steps on the WTA circuit.
We've actually got a sort of an alternative question here from Michael. I'm going to bring it up on the screen. Just give me a second. And he wants to know about Hannah Mandakova's daughter, Elizabeth Mandig, I think her name is.
Yeah.
Do you know much about her?
Honestly, until recently, I wasn't really aware of her existence as well. As I said, I have some blank spots in women's tennis at the lower circuits, and until San Jose, I didn't really know who she was in terms of the family story and all. And that run she made there, beating Teichmann, beating Risk, was a huge surprise to me. Also, playing Badosa this close. And then I actually realized that I watched a match of hers in February, but because I didn't, against Brenda Fruhvirtova, by the way, and because I didn't know, I didn't really realize that Mandlikova connection. I didn't even remember I didn't even remember doing that, and I didn't even realize that she existed. But yeah. She's got a super winnable first round as well. Is she in the segment that you're?
Just having a quick look to see if I can find her in the draw. There she is. It's got a wild card, hasn't she, against Zidansek, yeah.
And she can actually go deep, because Ons Jabeur didn't have a good warm-up campaign, right?
No, she's not. Ons Jabeur's kind of form is a bit sketchy since Wimbledon. She's doing okay, but I do get the impression if Jabeur's going to win a major, it'll either be on clay or grass. So that could well be completely blown out of the water in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know much about Mandlik either, I have to say, but I do actually kind of have an interest in the story. And it's quite an interesting thing with Jana Novotná, Wimbledon champion in 98, and we all know about the story with her in the final in 93, where she blew, I think, a 2-break advantage in the final against Steffi Graf. And I was very much wedded to tennis by that stage. I'm 42, so I was sort of getting into tennis in the mid to late 80s. I was on the Boris Becker bandwagon, and by the 90s, and to be honest with you, the women's final was as encapsulating as the men's, maybe even more so in that period, because the women's finals would be all the big ones. You'd have Navratilova, you'd have Graf, you'd have Sabatini, etc., and they'd be frequently playing against each other. Krejcikova a bit before that, and they were all going 3 sets, and there was always drama, and none more so than that 93 final when Steffi Graf won. And sadly, of course, Jana Novotná has passed away, but her coach was Mandlikova. And in fact, Jana Novotná herself had a big influence on Krejcikova as well. So it's marvelous in a way that we've still got this Novotná sort of legacy in so many ways. And now we've got her coach Mandlikova's daughter, who's really come to attention in the last few weeks because of a few landmark victories. And as a result, she's got a wild card here, and it'll be great to see her go far. And I'm really pleased that Michael brought her up. And we've skipped a few players, though. Are there any other women that, I don't know if you've seen me skate over them over the last sort of few minutes? I
didn't look at you, going down through the draw. I also have it somewhere. Cool. So, I can see it. But well, I mean, there are a couple of players who can win a match just because they have an easy first round, like Yuan Mie, but well, she's playing Jamie Furless, but I don't think she's really going deep in this event, or I don't think she's one of the most dangerous qualifiers, as we sort of hinted at before recording. I mean, there are just so many good qualifiers who get impossible to win matchups, and one of them is Golubic, for example, who also was in deep in the top 100, but had to play qualifying because of the cutoff days. But I was actually checking her records this a couple of days ago, and I was very stunned by something. If you were to guess, how many matches has she won at the Australian Open, US Open, and French Open combined? Main draw.
Five.
One.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it's not like she's played them once. She's played all of them 5 or 6 times. She's got a good record at Wimbledon, of course, because of the quarterfinal last year. But I was just really shocked by this, because I just had the feeling that she does well usually against higher ranked opposition, and that she's not really surface dependent. And it was a bit of a shock to me, but obviously she's so fun to watch with the one-handed backhand, which might very well be the best in the women's game. There's not much competition for it, so maybe it doesn't say as much as I want it to say. But
I mean, it's a horrible first round for her. I think many of
Yeah.
us see Pegula going far in this tournament, maybe quarterfinals or beyond. I mean, her ranking is 8, of course, and that's a justified ranking, but there's probably 1 or 2 players above Pegula, such as Badosa there, as we can see below her, who really, in terms of form, you would fancy Pegula to beat Badosa, and that's the upper echelons of tennis. So that's a really bad draw. I've got a comment here as well that I'd like to bring up to see if you have any thoughts on this. Somebody here saying Noskova is going to have a good run. Thanks for that, Trishan, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. She won Roland Garros Juniors last year. She's just made a 250 semifinal in Prague, and she's also one of the girls who I wish had a better draw, because she's playing Puskova, who by the way beat her in that Prague semifinal. It was fairly close. Puskova won the title. It was fairly close. It was a 7-6, 6-3, if memory serves right. And it's just very hard to beat Puskova, obviously, because she makes a lot of balls. As simple as it sounds, it's so effective.
Yeah.
And in that match, I liked how creative Noskova had to be with the angles, and she was actually doing it pretty well. Ended up losing, but it's certainly not impossible for her to beat Puskova, but it's not a great draw. I do think, however, that either Puskova or Noskova will have a fantastic chance to upset Pliskova.
Really? Because that's what I was then going to come up against. We've got 3 Czechs out of 4, and I've got a Polish girl as well there. I'm sure you're fairly familiar with Magda being Polish yourself. But really, you would think that Pliskova would be on upset alert, shall we say, should they meet in the second round, either Noskova or Puskova. I mean, Pliskova is somebody who you just don't know which Pliskova is going to turn up.
Yeah, obviously she's done well at the US Open before, was the runner-up in 2016, but yeah, you just never really know. And someone like Puskova or Noskova, who maybe isn't as good of a counter-puncher as Puskova is, but also is able to draw errors from Pliskova. I think she's in big trouble in round 2, regardless of who she plays. But again, I wish that Noskova had an easier draw. The same goes for Ashton Kruger, who's a bit higher up in that draw with Azarenka. Very big game, also an exciting talent. I think she's like 18 only. Let me check that. 18 only. Won Orange Bowl, so one of probably the biggest junior events. Not Grand Slam. No Grand Slam junior event. And yeah, I wish she had an easier draw, but she just doesn't. A lot of these most dangerous or most promising qualifiers just have awful first round matchups.
Yeah. I'm going to throw a theory at you, and I want to know what you think about this. Often, of course, I'm going through the draws and I'm thinking about who's going to go far and who's not, and who's going to win certain matches and who isn't. Honestly, if it's 2 players, especially maybe not at a slam, at other tournaments, if it's 2 players and I have no idea, so we've got maybe a wild card against a qualifier. Okay. Sometimes at this point, by the way, when you're looking at the draw 3 or 4 days before, you don't even know who that qualifier is. Unless the wild card is a home favorite for one reason or another, let's just say it's Andy Murray at Wimbledon, or if it's somebody like Venus or Serena in New York, or even just somebody else that gets in with a wild card, maybe like Kenin this year, I think in New York has got a wild card if I'm not mistaken. Unless it's something like that, where there might be a romantic story, or there might be even injuries playing its role, or whatever, I will actually go for, if you just said to me, random qualifier against random wildcard, I'm going for the qualifier every day of the week. That's a sort of theory that I go for, that I think 60, 70, and I've not checked this, 60, 70, 80% of the time the qualifier will win. Partly because the wild card is there for romance, let's say, rather than, so it might be a somebody like Verdasco or something, maybe at a Spanish event, for example, who's really, not won that many matches in the last few years. Against their qualifier, who, by the way, has already probably won 3 or 4 matches on that surface at that location to get that far. What do you make of that theory?
Yeah, very much agree that in a lot of cases, qualifying is actually an advantage because you've already
Yeah,
played 2 matches on the courts. It's not enough yet to get you tired. It's not enough really to,
exactly.
to just be some sort of just have the fatigue be such a big have such a huge impact on you. But you already know the courts. You're more ready than the other player. This is also a similar case with first round buys, as we sometimes get in ATP or WTA 250 events. In a lot of cases, they're not actually helping the players that receive them.
Is there a woman from all of the qualifiers that you think she has the best chance of going furthest?
Yeah, let me come back to the draw. Again, terrible draw for Clara Burel, who I think is still a big talent. Recently watched her live, and that forehand is just insane. But she's playing Rybakina. Daria Snigur playing Simona Halep, that's unwinnable as well.
Yeah.
Zhang Zhang, I'm so excited about her because she's got this great story. I actually read about it, like I didn't know it in full. I read about it just a couple of days ago, but back when she was 14, she got to 51 in the junior rankings and then had some serious accident, serious injury,
Hmm.
and it forced her out of the game for a few years. Then obviously she came through the college system, and since she came back, she's been constantly rising at the age of 27. So it's really been a long time since that 2010 junior success for her at the age of 14, which is pretty huge, when the other girls are 18 or 17. But again, she made the third round at the French Open, of course, and she's playing Coco Gauff, so that's probably again not
Yeah.
doable at all.
Yeah.
I am excited about Victoria Kuzmova, who can maybe win against Sorribe Stormo. I don't know. I mean, obviously, Kuzmova was the world number 43, I think, a couple of years back, and I never
Hmm.
really quite understood why she isn't there anymore, because for a
Okay.
while she just looked like a WTA tour mainstay for years to come, and it never really materialized. And yeah, this year she's just been picking up some good wins, titles on the ITF tour as well. Did very well in qualifying. Obviously, Sorribe Stormo is a very well. She's a bit of a pest. She is unpleasant to face always. And maybe she can do something. And then I think we also have 3 women at the bottom, where Sara Bejlek is certainly very interesting for the future. Lefty 16-year-old from the Czech Republic again. They have a fantastic junior system there. But yeah, playing Samsonova, someone with so much power, I don't think she can really handle it at this point. And I have to give a shout out to Contreras Gomez, because I think she's been the story of the qualifying, like as a whole, for the whole 4 majors this year. She only played 3: Roland Garros, Wimbledon, and the US Open, but she qualified every time. She's 9-0 in her career in Grand Slam qualifying, and it
Nice.
seems like wherever she plays, there's actually a group of Mexican fans following her around. There was this famous clip at Roland Garros when she shouted, like, I don't know if it was "Vamos Mexico" or "Viva Mexico" after qualifying, or Mexico, I suppose,
Yeah.
as
Probably
they
Viva,
read
I
it.
would imagine. Probably
Yeah,
Viva.
maybe it was "Viva Mexico,"
Hmm.
and it was just, the atmosphere at her matches in London, in New York, in Paris was just insane. I don't think tennis wise she presents that much of a threat, honestly, but it
But
is a story
listen,
that should be
maybe not.
pointed
But I
out.
mean, if you said that she's won 9 out of 9 qualifiers this year,
Yeah.
and Krejcikova is somebody who's really scratching around for form, went out in the first round of the French Open this year. Again as well, probably clay would be a more favoured surface for her. And also, listen, she might well get a bit of support whichever court she's playing on. Obviously, a huge Latin American community, and in
Yeah.
particular Mexican in the US, so she might well get a bit of support there. And if she can push it to 3 sets, that would be interesting. Let's say. Listen, I think we can't. We're going to finish very shortly, but I think we can't talk about qualifiers and the US Open, and particularly on the women's side, without mentioning a certain Emma Raducanu. So we're doing this show, and perhaps, who knows, we have another Emma Raducanu in 2 weeks from now, either on the men's or the women's side. What did you make of her run last year, and did you see it coming at all?
Obviously, I would be lying if I said I saw it coming. We had some ideas that she might be good in the future, of course, especially after Wimbledon, where who knows how it would have ended up if not for these issues with breathing, which were probably related to just being nervous. But I think just on the quality of tennis played, like I think we don't really need to look at like results around it and say that they somehow influence how we should view that US Open run. I think just with our very own eyes, we were able to see that Raducanu played tennis that was Grand Slam winning material at the US Open. Perhaps she just likes the balls that much because she just did well in Cincinnati as well, which could make her dangerous here again. Perhaps it's just really what it is about. But I mean, I don't really buy the argument that because Raducanu has, well, I think you could say struggled since then, that somehow belittles her success. And even if, I mean, she's 19, she's got so many years, and some people are already acting like she won that one slam and never did anything after that. She's got at least 10, maybe 15 years of professional career ahead of her. And yeah, it's just not enough to just say that she's a one slam wonder that will never achieve anything. Obviously, doesn't have the perfect draw here, playing Alice Cornet in the first round.
Tough.
Yeah.
Although I do think, Damian, just having a look at it, and I think if she gets past Cornet, and that's that's a 60-40, I guess, for me in Raducanu's favor. Yeah. But really, when you're a seeded player, you don't want to have a 60-40 in the first round. You want to have a 90-10, if you like. But I completely concur with you. She's got 10 or 15 years ahead of her. She's already in the top 1% of female players or even tennis players to ever pick up a racket just by winning a major. Okay. I mean, there's 400-500 players, if you like, on the tour, if perhaps even more if you want to go that way. But let's say there's 200 players that are regularly, qualifying for slams, appearing at slams throughout the year. And only about, 5 or 10 have won a major. So she's already in the top 1% of players, if you like, that are currently playing. I mean, she said at Wimbledon this year, and I think she's right. She said, listen, pressure's not on me. I've won a major and I hope to win more. It's the pressure's when you're Gael Monfils, shall we say, on the men's side, who've sort of threatened to win a major and have been touted as major winners, but have yet to do so. Stefanos Tsitsipas, albeit someone who's much younger, but is now expected to deliver. Alexander Zverev as well. And I'm sure I'm missing many of course, Zverev will be absent in New York, but you get the idea. These are the players, not Carlos Alcaraz. As Zverev said in his on-court interview when he beat Alcaraz at the French Open, he said, listen, I may have won today, but it's not going to be long before you and many of these other younger guys are flying past that next gen. And I did a podcast on that a few days ago regarding Sinner, Felix, and Alcaraz. So please check that out if you're watching. So, yeah, I agree with Trish here. Anyway, I think if she can get past Cornet, I think she could get as far as the quarterfinals. And I think we should all get off her back. That is for sure. Damian, any final thoughts on the US Open and qualifiers and wildcards and outsiders?
I don't know. Because I mentioned Contreras Gomez, I might as well say that Norbert Gombos also went 9-0 this year.
Okay.
Obviously, this is not a career record of his. He's one of the guys whom I think we skipped because of the Del Bonis factor, as I might call it.
Yeah,
because he's sort of a regular qualifier.
Yeah.
But yeah, went 9-0 as well. He skipped Wimbledon, I'm assuming, because he probably didn't really care to play it without the points. And yeah, I guess that's all I wanted to mention. These are the two players, him and Contreras Gomez, who went with who got the most wins without losing a match at Grand Slam qualifying this year.
We didn't dwell on Del Bonis, the player, but at least we've got a phrase for him now, the Del Bonis factor. It's somebody who will probably not get that much airtime as we look for some of the outsiders going into a tournament, the unknowns, the qualifiers, and he's somebody who just falls right in the middle. He's neither a player that gets spoken about a lot because they think they're going to go far, but he's also neither a player that gets spoken about because no one's ever heard of him. Anyway, Mr. Del Bonis, or Señor Del Bonis, buena suerte para este torneo, but unfortunately, we're not going to be dwelling on you too much. Damian, thank you very much for stopping by. We've had well over an hour of your time. Listen, long may you keep appearing on our timelines, and long may You keep getting mentioned by players like John Millman and Liam Brody because it's fully deserved. And we must make sure that we give some attention to some of these lower ranked players. And by the way, some of these lower ranked players, as we've already discussed from when we were going through the draws, someday may well be well-known players, if you like.
Absolutely, fully second that, and thank you for all the nice words. It was a pleasure.
Cool. We're going to end the broadcast now. Thanks for stopping by, everybody, and take care and enjoy your evenings, in Europe at least.